Next on the news.
This case is a challenge to how we practice medicine as healthcare providers.
The fight over abortion as we await a ruling from the Supreme Court on the abortion pill. New writings of the Bible found, the implications the text holds for researchers. Also,
it was a dream fueled by, very candidly, the fear of losing my child.
She'll go to the ends of the earth for her child, a mother who's looking to help her son and future generations of children who have a rare genetic disorder. Plus, a message of love, the Holocaust survivor who's encouraging people to work together to combat hate. I'm Christine Persichetti. This special edition of Currents News starts right now. It's the most important abortion case to come out of the Supreme Court since Roe v. Wade was overturned last June. After extending the deadline to midnight Friday, the justices are deciding just how accessible a common abortion pill will be to Americans across the country. The ruling on mifepristone will have wide-ranging implications in the pro-life fight. It may also raise more questions for doctors.
This is like, honestly, a game of hockey where you have no idea where the puck is.
Confusion around the country as the Supreme Court weighs a decision on access to the abortion pill mifepristone. On Wednesday, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito gave the court more time to consider the issue, extending a temporary hold on an order by a federal judge in Texas that would block access to the drug.
17 states and the District of Columbia have been ordered to keep mifepristone access as it is, and a judge who purported to issue a nationwide injunction telling the FDA to change the way that mifepristone is being administered. And so you do have a conflict.
The decisions the justices could make will have wide-ranging implications beyond if and when mifepristone can be used. One question at issue, can a single judge or panel overrule the FDA? The precedent set by the ruling could create chaos in the pharmaceutical industry and threaten the regulatory system that approves new treatments. It's causing concern within the medical community.
This case is a challenge to how we practice medicine as healthcare providers.
And on both sides of the aisle in Washington.
They basically have said this, the last two judges, hey, guess what? We know better than the FDA.
It could be this drug today, and, who knows what the next one might be.
The FDA approved mifepristone back in 2000, and since then, over 5 million women have used it. In response to the abortion battle, New York Governor Kathy Hochul says she's stocking up on the pill. Hochul will stockpile enough misoprostol, which can also be used to terminate pregnancies, to abort 150,000 unborn babies over the next 5 years. On top of that, she's forcing health insurers to cover it. The New York State Catholic Conference is fighting this plan, which also includes a series of taxpayer-funded abortion expansion actions. To voice your objection to New York's governor, you can go to the New York State Catholic Conference's website. That's at nyscatholic.org and click on the Take Action tab. You can get continuing coverage of this abortion pill battle online at thetablet.org. On top of the pro-life fight, the Supreme Court is also tackling religious liberty in the workplace. The case is between the U.S. Postal Service and an evangelical Christian. Gerald Groff is arguing the USPS should have given him off on Sundays because he believes it's a day of worship and rest. When he started in 2012, postal workers did not carry on Sundays. That policy changed in 2015 when the USPS signed a contract with Amazon. The Supreme Court heard 2 hours worth of oral arguments in the case on Tuesday. There seemed to be a consensus that a lower court was too quick to rule against Groff. Also tonight, never before seen long-lost verses from the Good Book.
The text, which contains fragments of Matthew's Gospel, chapters 11 and 12, can give scholars insight.
It's one of the earliest translations. Right now, an inside look at a hidden chapter of the Bible. The words have been masked for nearly 2,000 years, but thanks to today's technology, parts of Matthew's work have been revealed. Kelsey Gussie has the story from Rome.
The Bible is the best-selling text of all time, but a new discovery may put a new twist on an old story. That's because an uncovered text that's 1,500 years in the making has Bible scholars extremely excited.
Library put it online.
Thanks to an ultraviolet light on a Greek manuscript, expert Grigory Kessel discovered a hidden text in the Syriac language going as far back as the early 6th century.
I simply noticed that fragment and was attracted by the presence of the Syriac text, Syriac script, behind the main one, which is Georgian. So it's more or less the same text, gospel text, so that corresponds to chapter 12 of the Gospel of Matthew. But what is important, what makes it indeed remarkable and important, is that it represents, so it's Syriac translation, but it represents the earliest Syriac translation.
Kessel says this text contains both a fragment of the gospel and a story of the lives of the saints. He says he was able to study the document and make this discovery because the Vatican began digitalizing their large library a few years ago. We started to digitalize a precise and articulated project, manuscripts. Since there are nearly 80,000, we have an intense job to do, and we have already put around 15,000 to 18,000 online. Every year we digitize new volumes. This gospel fragment does not say anything heretical or new, according to Kessel. Rather, this discovery can be important for scholars in their study of Christianity.
So the finding of this fragment is very important for, I think, for those who work on Syriac translation of the New Testament, for biblical scholars.
The text, which contains fragments of Matthew's Gospel, chapters 11 and 12, can give scholars insight into how the Bible was written and the communities that read them. In Rome, Kelsey Gussie, Currents News.
And from the old to the new, hundreds of new Catholics got to put their faith into action with the Bishop of Brooklyn last weekend. Bishop Robert Brennan gave a blessing to the Diocese of Brooklyn's neophytes. Those are Catholics who received their sacraments and became fully inducted into the church during the Easter Vigil. The Mass is a yearly tradition in Brooklyn and Queens to welcome the new faithful. This year, it was held at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James, with Bishop Brennan celebrating Mass with the newest among his flock. Some 381 adults and children received their sacraments during the Easter Vigil this year. The new Catholics have plenty of good priests and parishioners to help lead them in their faith. And the Tablet newspaper is honoring one heroic priest in Brooklyn who recently passed. And the most heroic moments Monsignor Martin Garrity's flock will never forget happened during one of the darkest times in American history, the terrorist attacks at 9/11. At that time, he was the pastor of St. Francis de Sales Parish in Bell Harbor. And on top of leading a grieving community through the shock that was the attacks, he also helped to bury the fallen. The darkness only intensified when in November of that year, a plane crashed into Bell Harbor. Monsignor Garrity rushed over to bless the bodies. You can read more about him and his bravery in this week's paper. The paper is also highlighting a role model for Black Catholics, the first African-American priest, Father Augustus Tolton. The Tablet talks to a relative of Tolton who grew up hearing about the man, not the legend. Now you can learn all about him from this week's paper. So be sure to grab a copy at your local church. You could also get future papers sent straight to your mailbox by subscribing online at thetablet.org. Sometimes the smallest soldier has the largest battles.
On earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass.
Anthony Filipazzo's words not only have power, but they are representing hope for a community of people. Anthony has a rare genetic disorder called Williams syndrome, so his mother is doing everything in her power to raise money for research. The family is using their faith to guide them on a path that hopefully leads to a medical breakthrough. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has their story from Mill Basin.
Let's make a snack, buddy. Oh, what do we have here to eat? We want to have your favorite? Of course, strawberries.
Camille Fortunato says her 11-year-old son Anthony is 1 in a million.
Anything? Anything I want else?
They're the best of friends, dance partners,
God is watching over you.
reading buddies,
Your turn.
and the perfect duet. But in reality, Anthony is more like 1 in 20,000.
I am Anthony from Brooklyn. I like to swim, dance, and sing and play the drums. Yeah.
That's how many Americans are living with the rare genetic disorder Williams syndrome.
All day I wear my school.
Anthony's diagnosis comes with chromosomal abnormalities and causes physical and developmental disabilities. Among other serious symptoms, Anthony's blood vessels are narrow and rigid. It can cause him to very suddenly go into cardiac arrest.
That's always something that's in my mind. I go to bed with it at night and I wake up with it every morning. There's not a second of the day that I say, you know, it could be today. The moon and the stars are nothing without
But over the
you.
years, Camille hasn't missed a beat. She's given Anthony every opportunity to thrive.
Speech and physical therapy, occupational therapy, swim therapy, feeding therapy, horseback riding, music therapy. The evolution has really been remarkable.
Since undergoing cardiovascular surgery this past January, Anthony takes no medication.
When they fixed my heart, I feel happy.
But that's actually the opposite of what Camille hopes for him. Developing a therapeutic drug is the goal of the Anthony Filipazzo Grant for Williams Syndrome Research, a foundation Camille and her husband Stefano started in 2018.
When I started shifting my efforts into Williams syndrome research, it was a dream, fueled by, very candidly, the fear of losing my child.
Camille, a lifelong parishioner of St. Bernard's Parish in Bergen Beach, says her faith is what keeps her motivated. But that wasn't always the case.
Oftentimes I would say, like, you could have done anything to me, right? Why you have to hurt him? Well, maybe this was God's bigger plan.
Camille is now passing her faith on. Office manager Sandra Arcadi says Anthony is a big part of their church community.
People in the church should say their prayers the way that Anthony does when he answers Father Mike and Monsignor Grimaldi. You always hear him singing, always hear him saying amen, just really full of life.
Anthony becomes more independent every day, and Camille dedicates her time to raising awareness, hoping the future is certain and bright, not just for her son, but for every child who is diagnosed with Williams syndrome.
I hope that 20 years from now, children who have died already from Williams syndrome complications won't be dying any longer, that my son will be living a productive and fulfilling life, and I hope I'm still here to say it all. Here we go. Who's going to start?
Camille says with the research that's being funded by her foundation, she no longer feels like the future is out of her hands. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
To donate to the Filipazzo's Organization for Williams Syndrome Research, you can visit wsresearch.org. What a great story. There's a lot more news headed your way, including a mission to spread love.
Everyone should live in peace and harmony between each other.
The Holocaust survivor who wants to teach a younger generation about previous atrocities so the same mistakes don't happen again. Plus, the Texas initiative to bring religion into public classrooms, and why archaeologists in Rome are giving private tours of some important historical finds.
Holy Week in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Currents News was there to cover it all. From the Palm Sunday procession.
About 100 Catholics took to the streets of Brooklyn.
To the Chrism Mass.
Currents News' Jessica Easthope is in the thick of it all.
There are some priests here celebrating their 65th anniversary of ordination.
The conclusion of the first Lenten pilgrimage.
Bishop Brennan joined pilgrims for a majority of the journey.
Holy Thursday and the Way of the Cross on Good Friday.
The Way of the Cross is making its way over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Plus, powerful testimonies from new Catholics.
I'm blessed to be able to wake up every morning.
And a message of hope from Bishop Brennan.
Christ is alive.
Currents News is there. Happy Easter.
The Holocaust, not long ago, not far away. One survivor reminding us the world can never forget. On Monday, we commemorated Holocaust Remembrance Day, but every day there are fewer survivors alive to tell their stories. And every year, sadly, there is still more to learn. One man is racing against the clock, telling Currents News' Jessica Easthope he is on a mission to make sure his impact on this earth is more powerful than the hate he endured 80 years ago.
Father, and this is Israel, your dad. That's you, right?
Right. Yes.
This is Mark Schoenwetter's family history. Some of it he wishes he could forget.
I am very fortunate that I can be alive today and enjoy the life that I never suspect during the war that I'd be able to do it.
In 1942, Mark fled with his mother and sister from their small village of Brzostek, Poland. Their lives were in danger. Nazis started to ask, where are the Jews?
Nazis were kind of getting rid of all the Jewish people, taking them to concentration camps, labor camps. We were lucky that we escaped and we were not taken, but we had to hide.
This was the one that saved you.
Flashes of dead bodies, the thought of his father in a mass grave, and dark, cold nights hiding in the forest are just some of what Mark endured. When people began to suspect Mark's mother was Jewish, it was a Catholic priest who protected her.
Sunday came and we had to go to confession.
Mark's mother did just that, confessed that she was Jewish and hiding out with her 2 children. The priest restored her faith in God and in humanity.
And he tells her, my child, you will survive. Have faith in God. He's going to help you.
Mark says it's what the priest did after that confession that might have saved their lives.
After the services were done, comes to my mom, takes and puts his hand on her shoulder and walks with her, say some little things. So from that point on, nobody anymore mentioned any suspicion about her. As of 2 days or whatever.
Now, 8 decades later, Mark gives hundreds of speeches every year all over the country, educating people about the Holocaust. For him, that priest was proof that interfaith collaboration can make a difference.
It shows you that the church can do a lot like he did. Everyone should live in peace and harmony between each other, not in hatred. The son of
the son. Okay.
Yeah.
In 2019, Mark's 2 daughters, Isabella and Anne, started the Mark Schoenwetter Holocaust Education Foundation, raising grant money for schools to bring in educational material, new curriculum, and guest speakers. So far, they've reached more than 70,000 students across the country.
We've seen the power of education. There's so many districts that have no Jewish people. They've never met a Jewish person. And it's those schools that the teachers realize how valuable and important it is to teach about the past.
If we don't educate everybody about how we're all the same, we are stronger together than we are apart. And as long as we all decide to use our voices for goodness, we one day will drown out the voices of violence and hatred if we all come together.
I love that one.
Mark Schoenwetter can't erase the past, but his legacy will be helping others learn from it to make sure history doesn't repeat itself. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
A number of Catholic schools have invited Mark's foundation to share his experiences with students. The foundation has also given grants to schools topping $5,000 for Holocaust learning materials. To learn more or to donate to the Mark Schoenwetter Holocaust Education Foundation, you can visit mshefoundation.org. Over in Texas, the state Senate passed a bill requiring the 10 Commandments to be in every classroom. Public schools would have to prominently showcase them to children so that anyone with average vision can read them. A separate bill was also passed forcing schools to set aside time for prayer and religious studies. Both bills are now going to the Texas State House of Representatives. A relic from Christ's crucifixion is going from the Holy See to England as the Pope has gifted pieces from the true cross to King Charles III. The two small wooden fragments will be inlaid into a new cross of Wales, which you will see as part of a procession at the King's coronation into Westminster Abbey on May 6th. Following the ceremony, the cross will be shared between the Anglican and Roman Catholic churches in Wales. Still to come on Currents News, too much history. The creative thinking by researchers in Rome to showcase an array of artifacts to visitors. And the Vatican wants to make sure that's what's old is new again with the help of some new students. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. The Vatican is rolling out a new plan to preserve its past, and it's doing so by teaching students valuable lessons. Located in the heart of St. Peter's Basilica, the School of Arts and Crafts is an initiative set up to conserve and maintain the iconic Vatican building. Reviving a 200-year-old apprentice system, 20 students currently attend lectures and workshops in the academy. Best of all, the school is free for students. And not far from Vatican City, researchers at the Colosseum are dealing with an interesting issue. They're running out of space to show off historic relics of Rome's past to tourists, and that's causing people to be creative. Barbie Latza-Nadeau has more.
Under the shadow of the Roman Coliseum, millions of people immerse themselves in ancient Roman history each year. Here in Rome, museum curators are spoiled for choice. What do you do with 500 Roman-era coins? With limited space in the site's new museum, the Colosseum is trying a new hands-on approach. Warehouses and storage facilities brimming with artifacts are currently open to visitors. These former shops and market stalls have been converted into temporary museum space to hold the leftover artifacts that didn't quite fit into a new museum that opened in 2021. Until the end of July, 8 visitors at a time can reserve a special tour guided by an archaeologist who will let them hold these important historical finds, many of which have not been on display in 30 years. In this way, the people have direct contact with the ancient culture and materials, archaeologist Roberto Alteri says. After that, their fate is unknown. The popular pieces will upgrade to the museum, and the rest will go back to collecting dust in the warehouse. Alfonsina Russo, the director of the Colosseum Archaeological Park, says she hopes the project gives people a better understanding of daily life in ancient Rome. These artifacts tell the story of daily life, how they carried out activities, and above all, to bring these objects that would otherwise have remained hidden in our warehouses. She also hopes other historical sites open up their warehouses to let people see all history has to offer and to bring the past into focus. Barbie Latza-Nadeau, Rome.
While the ancient city is having a problem showing off its artifacts, tourism definitely isn't an issue. Not only is Rome one of the most visited cities in the European Union, but as many as 10 million people visit it each year. I want to go back. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.